Yesterday, I did an hour-long video where I read off what a fellow fan by the name of, well, I'm just going to call him VM for right now, had done back in 2017. And at the end of that, they talked about how, easy it was to simplify the situation when it came to the romance, the couples, if you will, during that time frame with Archie Sonic. They basically pointed out 3, if not 4, couples you could focus on, if not maybe 5 to an extent. Those, of course, being Sonic and Sally, Bunny and Antoine, Knuckles and Julie Sue, Tails and Fiona, and Jeffrey and Hershey. Or if you wanted to go the Tails and Mina route, you could focus on that too. Now, they gave plenty of examples how they could rework certain things. Like if you still wanted to go the Sonic and Fiona route from a story perspective, you could have Tails start crushing on Amy, I guess, after her change into what she would become in issue, 80, 81, thanks to the Ring of Acorns. Basically a Sonic Adventure design. You could have him start crushing on her and, basically have them both be there for each other because, Amy wants to be with Sonic, but Sonic's with Fiona. Tails wants to be with Fiona, but she's with Sonic. So, there you go. There was many, examples that VM gave, and I, along with a lot of fans, am pretty appreciative of that, especially, fans like him taking the time to do these kind of essays or rants or articles, whatever you want to call them. But he is right about one thing, as I said at the end of that one video, that all you had to do, if you really didn't want to screw up the romance aspect, the love aspect of the book, was just simplify it. If you knew to an extent that Sonic and Sally was like the primary romance that fans wanted to see always be, acknowledged and be a thing, in the book, then, that's all you had to do. And I'm just checking something right there. That's all you had to do was, make sure that was always there, that it was always, a primary part. Like it didn't have to be focused on all the time, but make sure there was an acknowledgement that they were an item, they were a couple. The same thing with Bunny and Antoine. If you're Ken Penders, Carl Bowlers, or later on Ian Flynn or any writer, and you're intent on keeping that couple intact without any confusion whatsoever, then that's all you have to do. Is you just have to make sure that you focus on that in some extent. Like, for example, if you still wanted to go the route where Antoine got replaced by Patch, by Anti-Sonic, who would be later known as Scourge, you could have still done so by maybe having Bunny acknowledge that she knows that's not the real Antoine, because Antoine wouldn't act the way he does even after getting a scar on his face or something like that, from some, battle or something. Or, she can mention, hey, this scar just came out of nowhere, which is a telltale sign to her that this is not the real Antoine and something is up, and that they need to find the real Antoine as soon as possible. So you could have had it done that way, to where her romance, her love for Antoine, of course, as we see, has never wavered once Sonic brought him back. But you could have it in a way that it doesn't make her, as VM put it in the essay or in the article, make her look like a hypocrite when she ends up going out with who she thinks is Sonic, who she thinks is Sonic, I should say, originally in 150, but it's actually Anti-Sonic, and then kissing Sonic a few issues later for saving her. You would save the trouble of doing that with her still, realizing that the Antoine that's there is not the real Antoine, and, vice versa, if you know what I mean. So if they would have focused on that, or done it to that kind of extent, they could have, avoided less confusion, less convolutionness, if you will, and people wouldn't be complaining either way. The same with Knuckles and Julie Sue. Knuckles and Julie Sue, to me, is probably the best example of a romance that and acknowledge is, in existence, is there and is canon, but it's not, like shoved down your throat a lot, and it's not done and it's not convoluted with, this or that, if you know what I mean. And then Tails and Fiona, that's one that obviously a lot of fans still support, because it's like, as I've said before and others have pointed out before, Tails and Fiona obviously seemed like the direction, Ken Penders wanted to go in. Just based off, what he was, hinting at, basically putting the characters through, stuff like that. So to me, if you want to get to that point, then, take the necessary steps in a non-confusing, non-convoluted way to get to that point. And if you wanted to do Tails and Mina still, even if according to sources it was meant as a visual joke that Penders didn't want to do because he still, I guess, had plans for Tails and Fiona. But if you were determined to, have the writers, have to follow through on that, then at least maybe in present time explain how, they got together, but do it in a non-convoluted, confusing way. And that's it. And the same with Jeffrey and Hershey. You want to focus on that relationship, go ahead and do it. You were planting the seeds for it as early as, let's say, Brave New World, which was post issue 50 story, basically, that was published in Sonic Super Special number 2. If you want to focus on that, you're planting the seeds as early as that, then go ahead and follow through on it, but do it in a less convoluted way. And that goes for all the romances that you would bring to the forefront. Some that you would hint at, some that you would tease, and all that. If you're going to go in these directions, do it in a very less convoluting way. I mean, Sonic and Sally, that's easy to do. I mean, you take a look at how they handled it in the Sonic SatAM cartoon, mostly in season 2, to where you knew there was something between them and all that, but it wasn't shoved in your face. And the confirmation came at the end of the season that these two were an item, that these two are now together, if you will. And, you take an example from that and you use it, in the comic, and you have less confusion. This is what, basically, to me, Sonic SatAM, along with the, at times, less confusing, focus on the relationship between the two, is what made them a fan favorite among fans, no matter what the situation. The same with Bunny and Antoine. Bunny and Antoine, you didn't have to, like I say, go the route that you did to make it so convoluted and dramatic. If you're Carl Bowlers or you're Ken Penders, what you do is you go down the route of saying, okay, as I mentioned earlier, Bunny acknowledges that this is not the real Antoine, because suddenly he gets a scar in his eye. Suddenly, because one thing that would give it away is he gets a scar, under his eye, and it's like, where did that come from? We weren't in battle or anything that caused that to happen. Something's up. And you could have Bunny maybe take Sonic aside, or maybe even Sally aside, and say, hey, I know that's not Antoine. That's not him. That's a fault. That's a faker. That's somebody else. And, go from there. And it's less confusing, because then you have a story, a subplot story arc, if you will, that focuses, maybe even in backstories to where they're trying to find out where the real Antoine is, and you eventually leads, to him being recovered in the conclusion of Linus' Secession, which was Ken Penders' last story. So again, it's not, as the old saying goes, it's not rocket science. You want to focus on certain couples, go ahead and do it, but do it in a less convoluted way, but also do it in a way that, from a story perspective, that, as you're building towards that moment, the payoff in the end is going to be worth the wait for the readers of the book, for those that, support the ship as well. Like with Tails and Fiona, if your intention is to build to that moment where they finally become an item somehow, then you build to that moment. You take the necessary steps to get there, if you get my drift. Or you catch my drift. The same with Tails and Mina. Even if you put that little image in the Mobius 25 Years Later original run, as a joke visually, but with the intention, I should say, that later on it might be built upon, by other writers, like a Penders or a Flynn, then what you do, prior to that, is you do a story to where it focuses on them, becoming, an item, becoming as such. I mean, you have a little teaser during the Bowler's Penders run where Tails is racing Mina. That pretty much should be a giveaway, to maybe something going on between the two. And that right there could have been like the initial start, like you're planting the seeds right there, the tiny seeds that are going to sprout and grow into a massive tree, known as the Tails Mina ship. You're planting the seeds right with that image. But, again, it's again, like I said, it's to quote that old saying, it's not rocket science, and it doesn't have to be convoluted or confusing in the long run. So to me, I think, as I said in the video, at the end of the video yesterday, I think honestly, if not truly believe honestly, that the likes of an Ian Flynn and writers that worked during and even before him, I don't think they would be so sick to the stomach about the shipping and the romance in the book, as much as he says he and others are. If these romances and ships would have been done more easily, they would have been done more non-confusingly. They would have been handled more correctly, I should say. If they would have been handled more correctly, the blueprint would have been just put out there, for these ships to come into existence and to be told justifiably, I should say, in the book. Had that all been done, I don't think anybody would have a problem. I don't think the shipping wars, as they are called, will be as bad as they are. I mean, they'd still be there, but they wouldn't be as bad and debatable as they are had these things been handled and told right from a storyline, story arc perspective. So overall, to follow up yesterday's video, I think the romances, I think VM is right. The romances, had they just taken out all the unnecessary access, if you will, here and there with certain things or certain couples, pairings, whatever you want to call it. If they would have done that and focused on the primary ones that it seemed like they wanted to focus on initially, things would have been probably a lot less confusing, a lot less convoluting, and fans and even future writers, like let's say Ian Flynn and others that worked alongside him, wouldn't be so unsure about adding romance or putting couples together in the book as they became later on. But what do you guys think? Do you think VM, if you will, has a point in what he said? Let me know what your thoughts are down below. Comment if you like. Love to hear from each and every one of you. Live chat during the premiere, your thoughts as well. Check out the Teespring store. I got more merchandise coming in the future. Like the video, and I am out.